Okay, hello, welcome to H3. My name is Alan Friesen. Brother Alan, you can call me, and with me is Brother Scott. Hey, Brother Scott, how you doing today?
Fantastic. It's so great to be with you here in 2024.
Yeah,
Yay.
exactly. We kind of missed a few where there was some ill health and some other scheduling problems, but here we are back together, so that's great. And your Christmas break was lovely, was it, Scott?
Yeah, I had that flu that's going around, and really, if folks out there, if you start feeling unwell, there's a really nasty flu going around Canada right now. Take it easy. I had it. I was down for almost 2 weeks, but you have to rest. It's not, it's serious, but get some rest, get some good nutrition in you, and you'll recover. But yeah, no, I'm excited about this year. I think that it's going to be a really interesting year, right? So
Well, there's something like one, I'm excited as well. It's going to be an amazing year. But the other part too is, I guess, like numbers, and you would know this with your time you spent in Japan for years, that the numbers collectively come to 8. That's supposed to be a really good year for some reason, right? That's a lucky thing in Japanese or Asian cultures. Is that correct?
yeah, it depends on, because 8 can also be unlucky because it's
Oh,
it's also a symbol for death. So
oh,
it goes by culture. It's a really complicated thing. It's like also, so their yon is 4 in Japanese, but it can also mean death. I got to be careful because it's really complex. So I thought it was really simple, and I would be like, when I first got there, oh, that's lucky, and they're like, so
uh,
yeah. So some
yeah.
people in Asia are going lucky year, some people are going not lucky, and Japan started with a really bad earthquake actually, on New Year, our New Year's Day. I guess for them it would have been maybe still the first. Katrina, my daughter's in Japan right now, and it hit the Chinese side,
Hmm.
the Sea of Japan. It was 7 point something, and there was tsunami warnings all along the coast. Uh, Under 20 people dead, the last I heard, but 60 or 70 injured, and a lot of property damage. So, but pretty positive year. The like you say, there's a lot of auspicious things going on this year, so people are excited too. So
We're going to make the prediction that it's going to be a maximum year of health and happiness and hope. So that's the prediction we're making.
amen. Absolutely, I agree completely. I Because I was unwell, sort of heading into the new year, and I had a little bit of a scare with some lumps and stuff, and I went online, as I do, and it said, if you're diagnosed with something really serious, the first thing to do is evaluate what's most important to you,
Mm,
and focus on that, because however long a time you have, the longer we have, the less we focus on what's important to us. But when we suddenly get told we may not have a long time, we suddenly think, oh, I better do what's really important to me. And
yeah,
this
that makes
advice
sense.
was to live like that's always the case. Live
Yeah.
like, you don't know, because we don't know how long. And I thought, it kind of hit me, and I thought, that's true. Like, it,
Yeah.
the rock could fall from the heavens and squish you tomorrow. And, as long as you live today to the best of your ability, then it was a good day, right? But
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
you, and that's sort of the point of tonight's show, right? That
Yes.
the quality of your life and what that does to your own health and your own mental health, but also the people around you as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of life and planning life and figuring life out, I kind of prepped this on my own when you were not well about Dr. Chestnut's book again, that eat right, think right, live right, or eat right, move right, live right. That's it. That's the one exactly. And
If I
then one of the exercises he has that I thought was really, really valuable was in terms of marking down the 10 characteristics. Yeah, I can't quite read that one, but the 10 characteristics
Page
of
332.
332, the 10 characteristics, universal attributes of a good human being. And I love that because, if you think about how much that we are all connected to everybody else, and here's just another way in which every human everywhere in the whole world, if you ask them to describe the attributes of a good human being, they would come up with a list pretty similar, right? What's going to be on that list, Scott?
Well, you asked me to do it, so I went ahead and did it.
Good.
And so I'll share my list with you for whatever
Yeah.
it's worth. Empathy, I think, is a really important one. Integrity, and to me that encompasses, honesty and genuineness and those types of things. Resilience, I think it's really important. I've learned as I got older that life isn't easy for anyone. I don't think
No.
it was ever supposed to be easy. So being able to get up and shake yourself off, and being a teacher, I found that that's one of the most important lessons that children learn, is that you fail at things, and that's just the way it is. You can either learn from that failure, or you can let it, hobble you or limit what you try to achieve in your life. So
Yeah.
resilience was in there. Open-mindedness, or that idea that other points of view have value, and that sort of ties in with my sense of that we're not all equal, but we're equitable, right? Like, you and I are different, we have different strengths, different weaknesses, but we have the same value, the same, priest, pauper, rich man, whatever. We all have the same value, even though we might not be, have the same skills. So to me, that's a kind of an open-mindedness. Conscientiousness, being responsible, I guess, is how I define that. Confidence without arrogance, and curiosity, I thought, was a good one. And I think that quality leads us to a whole bunch of the other qualities, especially if we stop and think, well, like, if you and I don't share the same point, and I stop and think, oh, okay, Alan's point has validity. I may not agree, but where can I find the validity in his point? Like, why is he saying this, right? So a curiosity about why things might be different, or why somebody might have a different point of view than you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Adaptability is important. Love and compassion, they're kind of the same in a way, I think. Not sexual love, but the brotherly love, or the love we have for all things around us. And then introspection, the ability to consider what we've done, or what we've need to do, that ability to reflect. And that came out of sort of my experience that it's important that I helped with social services, children with, or young adults with a lot of social problems. And one of the things that they didn't know how to do often was to think about the good things that they had contributed. They were very aware of all the negative things. I'm bad. I don't know how to do this. I don't do that well. I don't read well. But they hadn't learned to look inside themselves and say, oh, this is a good quality, and this I do well, and this I help people with. So that's my list of 10. It's a little messy, but that's my list.
That is a good one. That's a good one. And you're going to find, I mean, there's different words and different people have different perceptions of it, but a lot of consistency from person to person in terms of what that list looks like, kind of a thing, right? And of course, often it's going to be not tainted. It's going to be, what would you say, imbued with your perception. Like, if you've had a harder life, that you maybe have a greater deal of compassion than others who have had it easy, right? Like, I think that would make sense. Compassion would be less of a thing if you just haven't experienced pain and loss as much as others had, right? So yeah, I think so.
One of the criticisms of universal human traits is that often it reflects dominant cultures. And I don't think I agree with that. But the idea is that because, sort of, we have first world luxuries, we can think about these things, and we can, set up all of these values, where people who live without the benefit of our abundance of food and those things may not have the luxury of those characteristics, but I still think they're held. I've traveled a lot and I've studied religion in lots of parts of the world, and I would agree with you and Dr. Chestnut that it may be articulated differently, and the focus may be a little bit different, but they're the same. At the core, I think they're the same.
Yeah. And Dr. Chestnut, for the rest of this exercise, was basically saying, okay, if we can agree on here's the attributes of a good human, right? And you desire to be a good human, to have the complete and full expression of your human journey, kind of a thing. What does that mean? And then how are you then going to, sort of where we started, right? If you knew you were dying, you'd focus on what was really important. Well, then if that's the case, then how do you move forward that way to produce greater alignment with those positive attributes of being a human being? So yeah.
I really liked when he was talking about how we've really focused on science in terms of like our symptoms. So much of our health is based on addressing the symptoms, and looking for that bacteria or that virus or that syndrome or whatever is causing this, and then treating the symptoms. But where he was advocating that a lot of it has to do with, if this list of these values is in alignment with how we view our own life, right? Lifestyle. He had a special name for it, but self-assessment. There was another exercise that you did, right? How you feel about yourself. But
I think it was life satisfaction. I think your satisfaction. Yeah.
Great. And if those two things aligned, you were much more likely to be in good health and able to grow and meet the challenges. Was that how you read that as well?
Yeah, that's how I read that as well. And that was, you're kind of in sync, right, with your life and living your best life, kind of a thing. And therefore, life was easier than it would be otherwise, right? Because you wouldn't be conflicted with that, here's what the ideal is, and I'm not behaving in that way. I'm not acting in that way. I'm not contributing in that way, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I thought that was a very good exercise, and I think it's something that I love, again, about the whole universality of it, right? That, if we are all connected, which I believe we are, then that just is another reinforcement of that we're all connected, right? So it kind of gets a more of a spiritual bent to it, in terms of, we're not random meat sacks that are just kind of looking out for ourselves. We are part of of humanity, and as part of that humanity, then we have contributions that we know are expected of us, and that we want to do, because we want to fully express this human existence that we're having.
I think that's exactly right. And I was thinking of like, what value is this to us? Like, okay, we agree, it's cool, but what value is it to us? And I think that it builds that ability to not only have compassion for other people, but to acceptance and that connection. Because often I think that we want to help people, and we want to grow with them and to help them grow, but we feel uncomfortable. We think, oh, well, they're not going to accept me because we're so different, or we come from different backgrounds, or where this exercise really shows that it doesn't really matter what language or what culture you come from, is that underneath all that, at a basic level, we're the same, that human beings in very common, I was going to say general, but it's not really general. They're pretty specific, right? It's not just like, oh, we most of us have 10 fingers and 10 toes. I think it's more than that, right? Because even though we grow up in completely different geographies and cultures, and as different as human beings can be, the fact that we all value the same characteristics is pretty amazing.
And related to that, you'll note from your list and my list and Corolla's list when we compared it, your physical size, appearance, color, gender, sexual, none of those things make any difference. That list isn't in any way changed by any of those facets, right?
No,
Those are the things that usually divide us, but those are the things that are the least significant, right? They just don't count in terms of the attributes of being a good human. Just none of them come into play, right? So
no, I think that's exactly right. And I think that you couldn't profile who the person was from those traits, maybe by the language they use, right? What words they pick. Like I was thinking, well, is integrity just a 50-cent word for honesty? And then I was like, well, no, because it includes other traits, right? That equal integrity, honesty being one of them. But I don't think that just from that list, if it was done by me, you, somebody in the Russian plains, somebody in Indonesia, that you could say, oh, this is a 24-year-old African American from the Midwest. Like, I don't think that you could
right.
profile from that list because it's so universal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. And so the ramifications or the reason why this is an exercise is then kind of to do a self-assessment on where are you, how do you self-regard or self-rate yourself on these attributes. If these are the important attributes, how do you, and then from there, well, what would I need to do to move forward on this, to go from a 6 to a 7 or go from a 5 to a 6, right? That kind of a thing. And I think that's a valuable, that comes back to introspection, was one on that you had on your list, right? And about being aware of yourself and your thought process, and just being aware of how you roll through life, kind of a thing, and what difference that you could make to make that expression of a good human life even better, even more robust, even more with greater integrity. I'm going to use the word. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think when you answer it, there's sort of a struggle because you're like, well, am I being fair? Am I being hard on myself? Am I being too generous with myself? But, after I scored it and I left it for a few days and I went back and looked at it, it was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, and I think that they're broad enough that it doesn't come down to, oh, well, I didn't do this specific thing yesterday, so my score is lower. I think it comes more in terms of, how well do I live what I believe to be a good life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Cool.
and I don't think, well, I saw a video recently, and it asked a bunch of kids from our modern time, what would, oh, did I lose you, Alan? You still there?
No, I'm still here listening.
Oh,
Yeah.
just disappeared from me.
Okay.
And it asked them what they wished for. And of course, I'm sure it was edited, but all of the kids said, $1 million, $10 million, a zillion billion dollars, and, a Ferrari, like sort of dream kind of things. And then after all that, it went to some footage that was shot right after World War I think. And it was interviewing kids on the street. Same situation, just a difference in time. And what do you wish for? And they all wished for food and health, and like, I would love an apple, and just the difference in perspective was really sort of shocking in that idea that wants can change so drastically,
Mm-hmm.
but and both of these were in Western. I think the war footage was from England. I think the children were from the modern children from the U.S. But irregardless, I think that had they asked about the characteristics, they would have been quite similar,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I think that by focusing on what we consider to be of value in terms of a good life or a good person, lets us avoid that trap of what we want, right? A desire rather than a true value. Do you think
Mm.
so?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. And again, it kind of sort of the distinction between needs and wants too, right? Wants are related to where your position, your how
Yeah.
fortunate you have to be. Those wants become substantially greater than what your actual needs are, right? So, yeah,
Yeah.
he
The
makes a
Dalai
big deal.
Lama,
Go
sorry.
ahead. I was
I
just
was just
saying he makes a big deal about finances and then about identifying what needs and wants the difference between, right? So, and if you think about finances and the pressure to, create, a certain level of income, if it is in fact related to wants, that's easy that it could never your income could never actually hit the level that you desire that way. But if you focus in terms of needs, well, it's pretty simple to hit the needs levels, right? For almost everybody. So,
Yeah, it's the Dalai Lama once said, and I loved it. And he said, really, if you have a piece of clothing, even if it's a rag, to cover yourself, and you have something over your head to keep the sun and the rain off of you, and you have a little food to put in your stomach so that it doesn't hurt and you're not uncomfortable. Really, what more do you really need? And okay, so not many of us would want to live that way, but in truth, I've traveled to places in the world, and I'm sure you have too. You were just in Mexico, where people have a lot less. And I've said it before in our show, everywhere in the world I've been, I've heard children laughing. It didn't matter how awful the conditions were. I've heard children laugh in every part of the world under every condition that I could witness. And
mhm.
I think that's a testament to that resilience in value that has nothing to do with ownership or possession, or it's that value again and what makes us truly happy or well.
Yes.
So when you did this list, what did you think that would be a value for you to adjust, or did you find that everything is headed in the right direction?
Yeah, you know what? I think most of my self-rated things on that list were like around a 7 kind of a thing. Like, and it's self-assessment, so how accurate is that, right? But I guess if you're accurate in your introspection, it should be pretty close. And
Mhm.
so that doesn't mean, so that certainly still means there's growth opportunities available, and that I want to pursue those growth opportunities. And especially, I think that a lot of it that I'm trying to do is have a greater presence, right? Like to be more comfortable, more aware, more in the present moment, where I can be aware and value the rhythm in my chest, the miracle breath entering my body, right? That I'm not in any pain, right? That that my body's moving easily and freely, that my thoughts are clear and concise, and that I can express myself easily, those kind of things. So I think those are the parts that I that I think allow you to have greater enjoyment of just the whole experience of being alive, right? So, yeah.
And I think that, like you said, it depends on where you are in your journey too, right? Not just your circumstances, but of course, the value you place on these things would be different according to your age. And,
Definitely.
I find that having kids is a huge shift, right? Like, I think your values shift a lot because suddenly your care, your concern, your worry shifts from yourself to your children, or it doesn't, to your partner, to your loved one, to your pets to whatever it is you love. So I think that love has an amazing power to shift that paradigm as
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
for me, one of the things, and it's really interesting because when I scored it, the thing I scored lowest on was confidence. And
Mm.
I had to think about that one. And ever since the coma in Japan and, surviving that and getting back together and organized and healthy and those things, trying to find my place again is the biggest struggle that I'm dealing with on a personal level. So filling out this list really helped me sort of hone in on, say, well, okay, why? Because my introspection is, maybe I do it too much, but once I said, okay, well, why did I score this so much lower than the other things, right? Like if these other scores are what I've given them, then why do I have why is my confidence score so low, right? Like comparatively. And it was a really good exercise for me to say, oh yeah, well that connects to some of the other things that I'm feeling and trying to deal with and trying to grow through and learn from. So yeah,
So
pretty
would
cool.
also part of it maybe be a comparison of the capacities you had before, your failure of health and your capacities now, right? And that is kind of a, if you're comparing, it could be a confidence eroding type of a thing, right? Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely, I agree, and I think a lot of that, part of that is the man box thing, right? Like we have that physical, presence, and we have to sort of adjust that. When you need help from other people, that becomes a partial issue too. So, but it is interesting. I guess my point is that I think this is good for anyone to do because it can tell you things about what you really value, and sort of benchmarks. And I think that in modern society, we all sort of learn to, budget and set goals and do those things. But often they're not like these goals. They're like, oh, I need to buy a house. I need to pay off a mortgage. I need to go to university. Those kind of tick boxes, right? But in the end, do we really value those things? Not when the chips are down, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Not when we're staring at the end of, well, is today my last day? Suddenly those things have no importance at all.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, well, did I leave behind values and things in my family, my community, that will help people live a better life, or grow to potential that they may not have otherwise.
Yeah.
So
Then, anyways, the book. Show it again there, Scott. Show the book up for the camera. Let's see if we can see it here. So there you go. Live right for your species type. Eat well, move well, think well. Dr. James Chestnut is the guy. It's an amazing book. Took me forever to read it, but it's an amazing book. And he is all about root causes. He's about getting that source and saying, hey, what do you, if this is what you do, here's what you're going to get, right? In terms of your health, right? And some of the comparison health and your well-being and your what would you call it, your satisfaction and your enjoyment of being able to move through life, right? And at the end of it, say, hey, I had a good life, I did these things, I made a contribution here, I enjoyed these, I enjoyed love, I enjoyed happiness, I enjoyed these kind of things. And certainly everybody has hard times, everybody has things that go awry. That's like every human life requires that. But like somebody like Tara Brock would say, everybody's going to have those things. In terms of it's your reaction to those things that are going to determine whether you're in suffering, right? If it's an acceptance of this happened and, I can endure it, and I'm going to take these steps so it doesn't happen again. But I'm not going to continue to, in one sense, compare, right? Oh, geez, this is my state now, and it's different than it was before. Or this is what I'm experiencing now, and it's different than what I had before, and in a negative way. So if it's just kind of more of an acceptance of the simplicity, as you said, with the who'd you say that was? That was the Dalai
Ollie,
Lama. Yeah.
yeah.
So you got a piece of cloth to cover yourself. You got, protection from the elements. You've got enough food that you don't have any hunger pains, right? You're not in pain. Okay, so then that in terms of a need, it's pretty easy to get there. So yeah.
And I think you're right. I think that Dr. Chestnut was pushed it even a little farther, and that if you find yourself unwell, that you really need to evaluate this comparison, right, between the innate value and your own satisfaction list, and that a lot of our physical unwellness, I don't want to say illness, but certainly our unwellness, comes from a disproportionate or a discrepancy in those two values, right?
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
I think that I haven't finished the book either, but from as far as I've gotten, a lot of his point is that we control our health by how we live, right?
Hmm.
And I mean that sounds sort of simplistic, but I think a lot of us, and I include myself in this, don't on a daily basis say, what am I doing to contribute to my overall health?
Hmm. Yeah.
And then taking it to the next step, how can I contribute to other people's health? And when we get
Hmm.
to that level, then I think that we really start to live that good life where our expectations of ourself meet the qualities that we value as a good person, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, you look at your list. There's what, half of them roughly are outward facing. It's about your relationship with others, right, or your contribution to others, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, and I think the Dalai Lama, the one other thing that he added was something that you talk about a lot and that we've talked about on the show, and that's communion, right? Connection to other people. Like
Yeah,
if you have someone to share the space with, to share that tin corrugated roof over your head, protecting you from the elements, to
yeah,
share a few grains of rice with out of your bowl, that you have all of your needs met as a human
right.
being,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
you have connection to others, you're protected from the elements, you have something to cover your nakedness, you've got it made. And yeah, I think that one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is the value of human connection. And
Hmm.
like you said, forward facing, or just letting people in, right, and being there when somebody needs you to step in for them or with them.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Well, a very good book. Can't really recommend it. It took me a long time to read it, but I learned lots from it, and Scott is still reading it. We've done, I think, 3 shows about it now. So obviously it had quite an impact. And then I don't know what exactly is on our agenda for the next show, Scott. Where are we at here? Do you got a
Well,
plan?
yeah, we've got a couple of options. We've got some guests we're working on to try and nail down. People's schedules seem to be, difficult this time of year as everyone goes forward. One of the things that I found really interesting in the book that I'd like to explore more is some of the ideas about how our internal balance in terms of gut health, in terms of our hormones, our histamine systems, how that affects our outward symptoms, and how we can interpret how our internal balance by the outward effect it has on our health and wellness.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So I think there's been a lot of research. Dr. Chestnut's one of them. You talk a lot about of others as well, where they see what we consider unwellness. And, I don't want to go as far to say that, disease obviously exists, but a lot of those conditions are caused by internal imbalance. Right.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And I've been kicking the idea around that one of the biggest explosions in the internet was what are the symptoms, right? Like WebMD, there's so many different
Hmm.
portals. They're almost a subset because people are so uh, interested, concerned about the symptoms. What do I have if this, if I have
Hmm.
an itch and I have a rash, what does that look like? And I've been researching how people that are concerned with wellness and internal happiness are approaching that situation. Like, is there a difference? So I think I'd like to talk about that next week. I've got some good examples that I've pulled aside, and I think it's good to explore. So
excellent. Okay, well, I think, brother, we're done for tonight. So take us home.
Well, thank you. So happy to be back with my good friend Alan Friesen, the acapellist. 2024, we are telling you it's going to be an amazing year. So strap in, giddy up and go. We're going to do it together. Come back and see us next week, right here, 7 p.m.
Get a matcha and keep yourself well.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.